have the great misfortune of going last. That is just impossible. This has just been incredible. So it's all swimming in my head, and I'm going to still try to have what I was going to say come out. I'm going to start by saying we've had really rich stories today, stories of St. Lucia and stories of Mexico and stories of a struggle with a stranger who becomes a teacher and stories of talking, opening up the channels of elders to talk to the press. Incredible stories. Stories are how we understand who we are. Stories are how human beings learn from each other. It's how we connect to each other. Stories are how we've set up how we talk to the next generation. It's called history or her story. It's our stories across time. It connects us to people who've come way before us and people who will come way after us. Story is everything. What happens when we have any kind of transition in our lives, when we experience loss? What happens in situations of I call it neurocognitive challenge, just to have the largest, most positive umbrella you can possibly find to talk about that situation. What happens is we come into a 360-degree crisis of communication. We lose sometimes or struggle to figure out how we can keep story in our lives, how we can find our path to meaning-making. Then people surrounding us have a crisis of understanding how can they share story with us? How can we communicate across those cognitive challenges? What happens? We have communication breakdown. We end up in isolation. Isolation, we now know, from perfectly healthy people who end up in solitary confinement, mimics the symptoms of dementia. We know from research now that isolation is the health risk equivalent of 15 cigarettes a day. How do we know the difference between someone's diagnosis and someone's isolation? How do we know that? How do we break the glass? Our impulse, actually, it's no longer a method that we use, right? Reality orientation. It's not a method, it's an impulse. Our impulse for communication to break the glass is from the brain up. That's what I say. It's from the brain up. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to tell you who I am. I'm going to remind you who you are. We're going to talk. Now, in dementia, in neurocognitive challenge, you're already in a place where a word might not be there, where a concept might not be right there. There's a space between you and how you're trying to communicate. Our impulse for communication is wrong. How do we shift then? How do we break the glass? We go from memory and the expectation of fact and memory right on over to imagination and creativity. Imagination and creativity is already where people with memory loss, dementia, cognitive challenges are. I'm trying to think of a word. There's a space between me and the word. I'm going to use another word, the space between those two things. It's called metaphor, right? I can't come up with this concept, so I'm going to do a gesture, which I do all the time. It's very good nobody's standing next to me while I'm giving a talk because I'd totally hit them. But it's the space between the concept and the word that I want to try to give you. I can't do it, so I'm going to do emotion. The space between those two ideas is called metaphor. That's already in the place of creativity and creative expression. What we have to do is go over to that place and learn how to talk, learn how to communicate. Full body. Only 7% of communication is actually verbal. 93% of it is eyes, face, gesture, everything else. Body language, positioning, what you're wearing, everything else is nonverbal. And we are using our impulse, like I said, brain up. The good news is you don't need toe shoes, and you don't need you don't need an MFA in poetry. You don't need any of those things. Anybody have those things? Yay. It's good if you do. It's kind of fun. You don't need that. Creativity is really just making and arranging sounds, making and arranging words, making and arranging movements, lines, color, sound. That's all it is. We all have access to that. One of the first things I do in all of the trainings that I do about creativity, people, the first thing that comes out is, I'm not creative. And I'm saying, let that one go, because you are deep in your core. If you're human, you're a storyteller. If you're human, you're creative. Who here's creative? Yay, it worked. All right, so I do this work on 3 levels. We tend to think only of the second level. The first level is really just pouring water, and I thought I was going to bring up a water bottle and just pour it right into that plant down there just to show you, but it's pouring creativity into our everyday relationships. It's just infused in how we are in relationship to people. It's how we communicate. I'm going to talk about that one in a second. The second level is the programming. That's where we tend to think of this stuff, right? We're going to hold a poetry class at 10:30. Come on down. And people are like, I don't do poetry, so I'm not going to come. But it's programming is another level of doing it. The third level, which is where I've become addicted to working, and it's getting into this notion of community beyond the walls of your organization, is large-scale projects. And those large-scale projects spill over the boundaries of your organization into your larger community. They bring together family, volunteers, residents of all levels and abilities. They bring together staff of all levels and abilities. It is the soft tissue that can connect us. All right, prompts. This is the everyday connection. Look around this room right now and find a shape that you find remotely interesting. Let me tell you, looking down and looking up in this room will help. Or at another person, right? Take your finger and just outline that shape. That's really interesting, actually. Just outline that shape, all right? Now use your whole arm to do it. Right? All right. Thank you. We all just did modern dance. Right? It's all it takes. That could be a whole half an hour exercise. I just did it in 30 seconds. Oh, I skipped one. All right, thank you, Dr. Charlie Farrell, who worked in doing this work with his own wife, who said, oh my gosh, I just realized I've been driving her crazy for the last 3 years by trying to remind her of who she is and what words are. And at dinner last night, she was asking for the ketchup, and she couldn't think of the word, and I said to her, what do you want to call it? Think of a name for that thing, and we'll just all use that language. The red sauce. What the heck if it's ketchup or red sauce? It's red, let's call it red sauce from now on. What does it make you feel like? Spicy. Whew, spicy red sauce. Let's write those 3 words on a little card, tape it to that product in the grocery store, and leave a poem anonymously for someone, right? This is infusing the creativity into your everyday relationships and into a little thing that you could do together. What sounds do you hear outside this window? We could make those together. The core concepts of this work, so deep into the improv work that Karen Stobie does so beautifully, seeing, hearing, understanding what's happening around you immediately, embracing it, accepting it in a positive way, and adding to it in some way. What do you want to call that red sauce? You make it up. It's yours to do. The next one is what I call proof of listening. How do you let the person know they've been heard? You echo it, you write it down, you show them, you change your behavior in some way. The person has been heard. They need to have a proof of listening, that you are there listening authentically. I love this because open yourself to a sense of wonder. Wonder means we don't know. That is all that it means. It is appreciating the limits of our understanding. When we're in relationship with a person with dementia or a person with cognitive challenges, we literally do not know what's going to come out, who's understanding what. We have to trust that communication is going to happen and look for the beauty inside of it. Open yourself to the wonder around you and ask beautiful questions. This could be the topic of an hour and a half in and of itself. We've heard beautiful questions asked of the elders in order to then share it with the press. Beautiful questions open up meaning making to a person. How can I phrase a question that will invite that person into meaning making process? What do you see here? What do you want to call it? When do you use this? How do you use this in a movement? Let's capture it in a movement. Opening up a bottle of ketchup with beautiful questions. How do you open up a form, an intake form, with beautiful questions? You say, what color makes you happy? What food makes you smile? You can read these yourself. Shifting our expectation from fact to opening up beautiful questions into meaning making. Some of you are doing incredible work to bring people into the fabric of everyday living, where it's not done for you, but people living in community help fold the laundry, have purpose and meaning. And another great thing of research and purpose and meaning now is from Buckman's research out of Rush, is that purpose, having a strong sense of purpose, is preventative against dementia, which is pretty astonishing. Which I always say we should take 1% of pharmaceutical research dollars for purpose. Let's try that. Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. How could just the task of folding laundry be opened up into meaningfulness beyond the world of your organization? How could creativity open that up into a project? How could maybe dyeing clothes, selecting clothes, hanging them on a line out in a farm field in Sauk County, Wisconsin by artist Brenda Baker, which was a temporary art exhibit called Laundry Day, where all of the elders in the whole county area contributed, where all of the elders helped hang the laundry. And it was up in an exhibit for 10 days, and people came from all over the world to see it and to talk with people about the making of it. That is how creativity can open us up to each other, can help build the capacity of our relationships and connect us to the world outside of ourselves. Because creativity is the language of dementia. It is actually the language of life and meaning making. And my hope is that it's about time we learn to talk to each other.